Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol character spotlight. Today we are taking a look at the Rhino. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get right into his card here. So first of all, Rhino's coming in with at first what looks like relatively mediocre defensive stats. He's only a 3-3-2 for a 4 threat, but he does have 7 health, which kind of helps make up for that a little bit. He is size 4, so if you're going to be throwing or pushing him around, you're going to need some bigger throws to do so, and he only moves small. Then we go into his attacks. He's only got one attack on his card. It's range 3. It's only throwing 5 dice, and it costs 0 power. Wow, at the start of his card, he really doesn't look that impressive. After this attack is resolved, he's going to gain power equal to the damage dealt, so it is a builder. We've seen plenty of those before. And then before damage is dealt, he's going to place himself within range 1 of the target character. So he's going to get some mobility tied into that. He's going to be able to place off of them, maybe sit on their objective, or maybe get in range to hit someone else. So that's always a nice little ability to have, really, really powerful in a lot of characters. But now we're going to start seeing where this model actually becomes good because 4 threat with those defensive stats and 5 dice builders doesn't sound all that impressive until we get into the rest of his cards. So first things first, he's got Stampede. This is going to cost him 3 power. It's going to push him medium, and it does not stop its movement if it contacts a size 2 or smaller piece of terrain. So he's just going to blast through any pieces of terrain he hits that are size 2 or smaller. Instead, the contact to terrain feature is destroyed, then he continues being pushed. The next time he makes a gore attack this turn, he's going to add 2 dice to the attack roll, so that's going to make that 5 dice builder now a 7 dice builder with a place tacked on. Plus, this is not an action, so he's spending 3 power, getting a free medium movement, and then his gore attacks at range 3 are placing him beside his target, so he's got an insane amount of mobility on his card here for a slow mover. He can pretty much cross the map without actually moving once. So really, really fancy movement tech he's got going on here. Next, he has Nobody Ever Accused the Rhino of Good Manners. This one's also going to cost you 3 power, so he's definitely a little bit power hungry here. But he's going to choose an interactive terrain feature, size 4 or less within 2, and throw it medium. The super can only be used once per turn, so he's got a size 4 terrain throw. Those are always good, and it's medium, so he can get some extra distance there if after all of these attacks that he's made, he's not exactly where he wants to be anyways. But definitely can help out if, you know, your target's a little too far from the building for a small throw. The medium will help you do it, so always good in that regard. He's got aggressive, so after an attack targeting him is resolved, if he takes damage, he can advance small towards the attacking character. So again, just more mobility on this model. He's going to be moving up the board like crazy. And then he has Ornery, so when he is damaged by an enemy or notably allied effect, after the effect is resolved, if it is not dazed, it gains 1 power. So he's basically going to get an extra power anytime he's damaged by an enemy effect, and if you end up hitting him with allied effects, you know, something like you catch him in your own beam or something like that, or even some leaderships that deal damage to your guys, he's going to gain extra power for that, which is really, really good. So he can build up very, very quickly if he's kind of in the fray and people are swinging at him. And then next he has Rhino Hide. When he would suffer damage from an enemy effect, reduce the amount suffered by 1 to a minimum of 1, so that kind of makes up for those very mediocre defensive stats. So, you know, your opponent's already discouraged from attacking him because he's going to get aggressive and he's going to get all this extra power, and he's also going to reduce the damage by 1. So he's on the bulkier side overall. The stats are still low. He's not throwing all that much dice, especially if you're hitting him on the Mystic side, but he's going to reduce the damage. He's going to get all these extra bonuses for it. So overall, he's got a good amount of bulk to go around. And when we flip him over to the other side here, his art gets angrier, but otherwise there's not much that changes. The biggest thing being that his health goes down to 6 from 7, but otherwise I believe he's the exact same. So yeah, he's a little squishier on the flip side. I've definitely found he tends to go down a fair bit faster actually for only a 1 health difference. But yeah, he's still got a good amount of bulk to throw around here with, you know, 7 or 6 health and a damage reduction is nothing to scoff at. It doesn't really matter what his dice are at that point. But, you know, 3 isn't bad either. It's just not particularly impressive. So, yeah, here we have a really, really fast, really, really stompy. He's going to destroy a bunch of terrain on his way. Model, he's going to hit reasonably hard because if once he gets kind of rolling, he's going to have those stampedes going, and that's a 7 dice attack, usually followed up by a 5 dice attack most turns because this model does not have a hard time getting into range. The exception to that kind of being turn one. A lot of the time, turn one, Rhino is just double moving. Sometimes he gets to punch something, but not very often unless you have ways of getting him extra power, because he does only gain one per turn. Can't really talk about Rhino without talking about his tactics cards. So Rhino has two tactics cards. He's got Rhino in a China shop. This is his first one here. He can play this card at the beginning of his activation. The next attack Rhino makes this activation adds dice equal to the combined size of all terrain features destroyed this activation. At the end of the activation, he's going to take 2 damage. So this card can be pretty niche. First of all, that 2 damage will give you a power because of the way Rhino works. But this can be a little bit on the more niche side of when it's going to be useful. If you're seeing a board with a lot of kind of size 2 terrain, especially size 2 terrain that's like clumped up and close together, this can be really good because you can stampede your way through it and then, hey, even maybe throw a building or something like that. And suddenly, you're adding 6+ dice to your next attack. So that can be really, really good if you just need to kill one specific thing. Um, or actually, I guess it would be 8+ because you also stampeded. So, you could be throwing out some really, really hard-hitting attacks with Rhino with this card. On the flip side, a lot of the times it's kind of looking for a kind of dream scenario of, there's lots of pieces of terrain on the board that are within punching distance of your opponent that are size 2 or less, and preferably more than one of them. And then if you want to be able to get that throw in there, you also want to be able to land beside a relatively large building. So you're kind of asking for all these factors to just kind of line up for you, and it doesn't always happen, but when it does, this can be a really, really powerful card. I mean, just the idea of Rhino throwing out a 13 dice builder, that's going to have him set for the next round. You're also going to be able to probably do a good amount of damage, if not just take someone off the table. So potentially a really good card here. The taking the 2 damage part hurts a bit, but especially if like kind of Rhino's on his way out anyways or something like that, it wouldn't be a bad option to at least include it in the 10. Maybe it's not going to hit the table every game. You're really going to have to judge the state of the board and everything like that going into the game. Just in terms of, how much terrain is around, how much of it can he plow through and stuff like that. So it's a neat card, but it's got its limitations for sure. His other card, however, is considered pretty much an auto include with Rhino. This is a robbery. And this card reads, if it is Rhino's activation, he may spend 2 power to play this card. He's going to choose an enemy character within 1 of him, which note for him is relatively easy to do because when he punches something, he places within range 1. He's going to choose a character that is holding an objective token. That character drops any objective token they are holding, and then he's going to throw them medium. So yeah, this is a fantastic tactics card. There's not too much more to say about it than that. You're going to pay 2 power, you're going to make someone drop an objective, and you're going to throw them medium. And this is a size unrestricted throw as well, so this is going to affect anyone. This is an absolutely amazing tactics card. I mean, this is how you're going to be able to. Objective steals in general are considered very good, but very few of them cost 2 power, no action. Like, this is just really, really powerful. You could do this to a Hulk or something, for 2 power, that Hulk that was going to be holding on to those cosmic cubes the entire game because maybe you don't have the hitting power to try and kill it. Well, now, not only are you going to make him drop it so you no longer have to worry about that, you're also going to throw him, which is great. Like, so many models hate being thrown medium, especially a lot of kind of the kaijus. So, this is a really good way to kind of counter some of those more kaiju style models. And yeah, it's a great card in general. Even in games where it's not like that, it's still a 2 cost objective steal with a throw. It doesn't matter what model you're using this on, you're getting value out of it. One thing you do have to note when playing this card is mission objective, specifically the other tactics card, can be used to kind of counter this. If they play mission objective to pass off their objective token instead of dropping it to another allied character, then you also lose the throw. So you end up basically just wasting this card. So you got to be careful for that if your opponent's running mission objective. It's a bit of a direct counter card to this, but otherwise really, really powerful card and definitely worth bringing pretty much any game you have Rhino on the table. So back into kind of talking about Rhino himself, and kind of what this model likes. So first of all, he's a member of the Criminal Syndicate and the Spider Foes. So we'll kind of go through their leaders bit by bit here. And Criminal Syndicate, obviously, he has a lot of options. We're not really going to talk about Claw here, I don't think, because Claw is very selfish and doesn't actually do much for Rhino. But for the other ones, I think he definitely really likes Kingpin. Being able to count as two on his healthy side, which is obviously his side with more health as well, is absolutely huge. Plus, he's very, very good at kind of forcing his way onto your opponent's back points and things like that with that place on his attack. So Rhino is going to be very, very in your opponent's face. They're going to have to punch him at some point, which is going to power him up. So it's really, really good in that regard. He's also just kind of the type of model that Kingpin likes. He likes having kind of bulkier, large health pools with damage reductions and things like that that can just kind of walk onto your opponent's point, sit there and say, you know what, this is my objective now, and I don't care what you do about it. So he's great for that. It's also because this is more of an objective game that Kingpin's kind of going for here. He's got that card to help him out there. So I definitely think he does quite well under Kingpin Criminal Syndicate. Going into MODOK here, MODOK letting him turn other things into hits based on his wilds. I mean, it's definitely not bad. It's going to help him build a little bit more power here and there. It's also going to help keep him alive a little bit more. So it's certainly not bad for him. I don't think it does anything particularly too special for him that it doesn't do for others. One, I guess, kind of bonus to it is the fact that because Rhino is all builders, he's going to get a little bit more power value out of this leadership, which is nice. I certainly don't think he's a bad choice. I mean, in Criminal Syndicate in general, I think he's a good model, but I don't think there's really anything specific he's gaining from the AIM leadership there. So, yeah, it's definitely not a bad choice. It's just not really my first thought when it comes to models that I would want to bring under MODOK. And then lastly, we have Shadowland Daredevil, and Shadowland Daredevil is when he's attacking people contesting or holding objectives, he can reroll attack dice. This is solid for him as well because, like I said, he does like to be kind of pushing those back points and stuff. So he is oftentimes attacking models that are holding or contesting, holding for use of the card and contesting to be sitting on the back points. So it's solid in that regard. Once again, the reroll is going to kind of help him get some extra power on those builders and stuff like that. So not bad by any means, but again, nothing particularly too special. It does just kind of play into the game Rhino's already playing, which is nice. So yeah, in Criminal Syndicate, I think generally speaking, he adores Criminal Syndicate. He likes pretty much all these leaderships. Again, I don't really count Claws, but I don't think he particularly dislikes Claws either. It's just there's no real benefit for him. Claws is a very selfish leadership. So yeah, I think Criminal Syndicate though is a place that Rhino can really really shine, and most of the leaderships support that in a good way. So I think he's solid under any of the Criminal Syndicate leaders, and of course I just totally backed out, but that's okay because we know the next one we're going to is Spider Foes, the other place he's affiliated. Spider Foes now has two leaders. They've got of course Green Goblin, who they've always had, who's going to make your opponent reroll their defense dice. Same logic as with some of the Criminal Syndicate leaders. He's going to benefit from this just because your opponent's going to be taking more damage and you're going to be gaining more power because everything you do is builders, and that's good. So there's not much more to say about it than that. It's a solid ability in general. There's a small, very, very small anti-synergy, I guess, with Trick or Treat because Rhino's going to be destroying all this terrain and throwing all this terrain, so you have less to blow up, but I think that's so small it's almost negligible, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. Yeah, I think the Oscorp weaponry leadership is definitely fine for Goblin and or for Rhino rather, and yeah, I don't think there's any reason necessarily to say no to that. Kind of similar to a couple of those Criminal Syndicate leaderships there. And then we get into the new one, the Sinister Six. So after an attack targeting allied characters resolved, if they're not dazed, they're going to gain a power. So it's basically going to double up on his ornery, but even if he doesn't get damaged, which can be really, really nice. Mind you, with his relatively low defensive dice, he probably is taking one damage from most attacks that come his way. But that's fine because then he's getting three power for that one damage. So that is really, really nice. I mean, one damage onto Rhino is enough to power one of his superpowers, which is really, really powerful. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. And then additionally, it gives him some condition removal, which is one of the ways you can really deal with models like Rhino is putting something like a shock or an incinerate on him can be absolutely crippling for a model like that. I mean, incinerate less so than shock just because he's already got kind of mediocre defensive dice. But putting a shock on this model, he feels very, very sad. Um, So being able to remove shock from him is fantastic. I mean, it's really good. Slow obviously doesn't do all that much to him unless you're specifically against like She-Hulk or something. And Incinerate is handy to be able to remove still. He is still a bulky model, so being able to give him as much benefits to that as possible is nice. So yeah, I think honestly, out of all of the leaderships we've seen, I think the only one that really competes with Doc Ock for being affiliated with Rhino is Kingpin, and those are kind of probably the two best places to be running this model. But yeah, so I think he's a great choice in his own affiliations. He definitely appreciates both of those leaderships there. In terms of splashing, I think Rhino is a very, very splashable model. He can be run in a lot of different places. Notably, I think some of the places that he performs best are in leaderships that are going to give you a little bit of extra power here and there. So, I've run him in Avengers, for example, because he has nothing that he wants to spend power on in terms of attacks or anything. It's all in superpowers. So I run them in Avengers trying to make that Stampede cost two and the throw cost two, or, typically only one of them. But I've run them there. I've run them beside Wong, so I'd be able to do stuff like Stampede turn one. And there's definitely other ways to do that. Stuff like Advanced R&D can help you get there as well. Really, any leadership that's going to give you a little bit of extra power and then also give him one extra power, or if you have a leadership that's capable of giving him more than one, something like an A-Force or a Cyclops X-Men even, you could throw a little bit of extra power his way early on and theoretically get that Stampede online because turn one Stampedes can do a lot of work. I used to run him as a main character in my Avengers roster, and he did a lot of work with those. I mean, he was able to push to midline objectives or even back B points sometimes, throwing a 7 dice attack out on the models, sitting on those points who thought they were safe, but then the large base Stampede just came their way and was like, this is going to hit you now, and I'm going to contest your back point, and you have nothing you can say about it. So he's really, really good in that regard. There's some great synergies you can do with him there. Again, just any leadership that's going to help you gain a little bit of power, especially if you can gain it earlier on, because once this model gets rolling, he does tend to be a little bit more self-sufficient. He needs a little bit of help to get to that first three power, but once he does, between a 7 dice and a 5 dice builder, usually he's building enough that next turn he should be able to stampede again. If not, do both the stampede and the nobody ever accused the Rhino. Because, I mean, in an ideal world, he's doing both. This model's potentially capable of doing a lot of damage in a turn if he can get rolling. The issue is he's just a little power hungry to do it, but size 4 terrain throws can definitely throw out a lot of punch as well. So yeah, overall, I think Rhino's kind of playable pretty much anywhere. I can't think of a single affiliation where I actively dislike him, but best places for him are definitely the ones that are going to give you a little bit of extra power here and there. So that's going to be your Avengers, your A-Force, your Cyclops X-Men, even kind of like Red Skull 1 Cabal, Red Skull 2 Hydra to a certain degree. I mean, he's always going to be trying to contest your opponent's back points and stuff, so he's pretty decent for Hydra in that regard because he can tie up their back points, gain extra power for doing it. So that's going to be solid for him. And then Emma Frost, her leadership is also great for him. He's going to get some extra power, and even when he doesn't, when he takes damage and loses power, well, he doesn't actually lose power. He gains one back anyways because he has that ornery. You don't want to be doing that too often, obviously, but it is something to acknowledge that it's a little bit less of a drawback for him. So, yeah, it's he's a very, very splashable model. I think he can go pretty much anywhere. Heck, even stuff like Dormammu doesn't hate him too much. He's gonna be, building extra power, making those stampedes more often, and I think that's really the key to Rhino here is he wants to stampede as often as humanly possible. It is only once per turn, so you can't do two 7 dicers in a turn, but you really want to be making sure you're getting the one and you're getting that place and the extra movement off of it. So, Rhino's very, very capable of pretty much crossing the board in a single turn between a stampede and two range 3 gore attacks that are placing him off of the targets. Um, he can definitely close some huge gaps. So really, really solid rounder model. I mean, there's not a crazy amount more to say than that. He appreciates some tech that can kind of help him stick around a little bit longer. He is deceptively squishy. He will die if your opponent chooses to target him down. The damage reduction is fantastic on 7 health, but those dice are really not doing him any favors. So if you have ways you can help keep him around, if you have healing, again, we'll go back to saying, Emma's leadership is probably solid for him. He's great for that sort of thing. He also really hates a lot of special conditions. I already mentioned shock, but I also think stagger can be quite rude to him. Obviously, he is only doing one kind of big attack per round, so it's not the end of the world, but he definitely appreciates the second range 3 place a lot of the time. Because I find very often what I'm doing with him is I'm using the first one to attack what I really want to attack, and the second one to position me for the end of the round or the next turn. So, not having access to both gore attacks can be really annoying for him. Not the end of the world, but it's nice to be able to get some condition removal going with him. So, no, notably just for shocks and for staggers, really. The other conditions aren't the end of the world, but if you can peel and incinerate from here or there, or even like a stun or a poison, the stun isn't too bad for him because the ornery is a separate source of power. Plus, he's got the reduction, so he's not often taking more than like 1 or 2 damage from smaller attacks at least. But then, the order will still give you an extra power, so it's not the end of the world if he's stunned, but he definitely doesn't appreciate it, especially for his builders. Um, and then, poison is annoying for him as well because he really needs to be a lot of the time he's relying on that one extra power in the power phase to push him over that edge. So yeah, I think again I'm gonna point out that I brought Wong with him in the past and Wong had a good amount of success with him. But yeah, he's just a very good model. He's gonna move around the board very quickly. He's gonna deal a good amount of damage. He's got a size 4 terrain throw. He's got crazy good mobility and some good deterrence from attacking him between aggressive and ornery. And never forget how powerful aggressive can be, especially in something like a kingpin list where they're going to punch him, and now not only have you powered him up, but he's going to be on your back point and he's worth 2, so he's going to do a bunch there. um that can be really good. It doesn't really help him get up the board all that much because his own abilities kind of do that for him. This, as soon as he's being punched, if he's being dealt damage, he's got Stampede online now, so I mean, he's going to be wherever he wants to be anyways by the end of the turn, but still really solid bit of tech that you can kind of use almost as an objective aggressive more than anything. So really good in that regard. I mentioned a handful of tactics cards with him. I don't think there's too many specific ones that he cares about all that much more than anybody else would. Being a bulky model, he does appreciate patch up. Just having that damage reduction means damage on him is a little bit harder to get. So being able to heal him up is a little bit more infuriating for your opponent. So patch up's not bad. And I think I already mentioned advanced R&D being a good way to give him power if you're not running someone like Wong or a leadership that's going to help you get him online faster. It can be a good way to kind of close that gap for him. So that's a solid option for him, but I don't think he particularly cares about too many other tactics cards other than his own. I mean, he might get some value out of the odd one here and there, but nothing too crazy. So yeah, I think the last thing to kind of talk about for Mr. Rhino here is crises cards. And as far as crises go, Rhino can kind of play anywhere. I mean, he's got the mobility to rotate around things like D maps reasonably well. He definitely cares more about the secure game than the extract game, but as far as extracts are concerned, he really doesn't mind most of these all that much. Something like Scrolls, go ahead, push him towards you. Like, you do not want to be punching this guy early game. If you give him too much power, he's going to be a menace for you to deal with later. Senators is great for him too, I find. He's going to make your opponent drop them, which can feel really good. But also, he doesn't care that much about the hindered mobility from Senators because this man shouldn't be doing move actions very much past the first turn unless he's really feeling starved for power. So he's solid there. Struggle for the cube. Unfortunately, I believe the cube damage is considered a neutral effect. So I don't think he gets extra power out of it, but he does still appreciate the extra power from the normal cube bonus. He just won't get the benefits of ornery, which is fine. I really just like him on most scenarios. I mean, he absolutely loves holding a hammer, and he can technically grab one turn 1, which can be really rude. Or sorry, like turn 0, he can grab it before moving. Um, And he's solid on stuff like Researcher as well. I mean, the threat level isn't the greatest for him, but being able to just kind of, place himself on that middle point with every attack he does, and then having the aggressive to make it harder to control him and throw him off can be really, really solid there. So I think in general, he's pretty solid for most of these. Even stuff like Legacy Virus, where he's gonna, again, he's able to make people drop them, so that can be really good. And then he's got the mobility to kind of cross the map and, go pick up two or three of them in a turn if he can. So there's some cool things you can do with him in that regard. Going over to Secures, again, as I mentioned, he's great at rotating between even D maps and stuff like that. B maps, again, he's gonna have no problem getting from one side of the board to the other if he needs to. The big kind of caveat with that is he does need something to hit on the way there, because I'm pretty sure the medium and the range 3 might be enough on a B to get from one side of the board to the other, but I don't know if it would quite do it on a D. I've had great success with him on intrusions. He likes seeing middle line secures because he can kind of get to those and start punching them early on, so that's good for him. Scoundrels can be a little bit awkward because most of the time he is attacking from outside of range 3, so he won't always enjoy that they're going to have cover for him. I think that's actually probably one of the worst ones for him. But then, yeah, I think overall he's pretty happy with most of them. Fist can be a little risky with him, just because I think the witnesses stabbing him counts as a neutral effect, so I don't think he's getting extra power out of that one. And B, stun again is not the end of the world for him, but it's not his favorite condition. Similarly, Demons Downtown, I think for the most part he likes the map fairly well, but being lit on fire, not his favorite thing. That said, having all of your opponents lit on fire, and again, your primary targets are usually models sitting on objectives, that is kind of something he really likes. So there's some give and take there. But yeah, overall, I think he's not going to be super picky about which scenario you're playing on. He's going to be good pretty much anywhere, with a couple notable kind of slightly worse for him spots. So yeah, that is going to be it for Rhino. I think I've said most of what I have to say about him. I mentioned a handful of models that I like him with. Again, notably characters who are going to give him a little bit of extra power here and there. I do quite enjoy running him with stuff like Wong or Advanced R&D. A little bit of healing and condition removal never hurt either. Um, so yeah, he's a great rounder. He can play into pretty much any list. He's got some really, really solid tech because I mean, this model will cross the table and then make you drop your objective and throw you away. You can't really prevent that short of, putting models directly in his path to stop the stampede, and then also having nobody kind of for him to punch in the middle, which is just a hard to avoid scenario. So he's got a crazy amount of mobility. He's really hard to kind of prevent from doing what he wants to do, from an opponent standpoint. Because if he's starting the turn with 5 power, that's enough to. It doesn't matter what his builders do for him. That's enough to stampede into a this is a robbery. And double range 3 place. This model moves. He's gonna cross the table in no time at all. One round he can get very, very far. Um, so nobody's safe, which is really powerful. So yeah, that is going to be it for Mr. Rhino here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do character spotlights and stuff like this all the time. We also do battle reports on the weekends. So yeah, more of these to come for sure. Let us know down below in the comments if there's anything you guys have in mind related to Rhino here. The synergies that you like that I didn't get a chance to talk about here. Are there specific plays you've done in the past that are really, really cool with him that maybe I didn't mention here or anything like that? Definitely love to hear it down below. Just kind of let me know what your best moments with Rhino have been. Curious to hear how he's been doing for everybody. But as far as my piece is done, that is going to be it for this video. So until next time, everybody, have a great day. Peace.